If we could only convey to all women the power, the latent power that we have within us, that we can do without trying to get them to do something, that we can do on our own, and how really simple a lot of it is, and remembering why we married him in the first place. Everybody who gets married wants their marriage to last. They wouldn't do it. It's too hard. It's too much of a commitment. It's too expensive to do it if you didn't want it to last. And it doesn't, and it can last, and it can be romantic your whole life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with my mom, Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So we are here today to talk about infidelity in your relationship. We actually did a video on this about 2 years ago. I think it was actually yours and my very, very first video, which is kind of funny to think about that was the first subject that we did, because it's a really intense, kind of deep subject. But yeah, we wanted to redo it because we hadn't learned how to edit back then, and we felt like we left a lot of things out, and we just wanted to put some more details in it because it's a really, really important subject, and I think we get asked about it on a weekly basis. It's just so talked about, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and it's really sad that it's such a problem.
Yeah. So today in our video, we want to cover the 3 different types of infidelity, because we don't really feel like it's just infidelity and that's it, and it's in a box. There's a lot of different types of infidelity that you might be experiencing in your relationship. We're going to talk about whether or not it is repairable and how to tell if it's repairable. And if it is repairable, we're going to give some tips for the ladies on how they can repair it.
What you can do,
Yeah, what you can do. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about forgive and forget, what that means, or that whole cliche phrase. Before we get started on the 3 different types, we just wanted to share some of the digging that we did on infidelity. And I know you can't believe everything on the internet. Not everything's completely accurate, but I think it's pretty common that infidelity is said to be the number 1 cause for divorce. Right?
Not surprising. Yeah.
Not surprising. It's estimated that if someone cheated before, there's a 350% chance that they will cheat again. That's another statistic. Again, I don't know how perfectly accurate these numbers are, because that's just one statistic that I read that I thought was really shocking. Around 60 to 75% of relationships can be restored after an affair, provided the cheating partner is willing to cooperate.
That's pretty important.
We can get into that one in a minute. Yeah. How long does a marriage last after infidelity? Again, it's just one study. Some people say 1 year, but it usually can go up to 2 years for a couple to heal from infidelity. That's just one study that was done. 4 in 10 marriages are challenged by affairs, which is crazy. So what's typical about all those statistics is they don't talk about what kind of affair it was.
I think that they mean sexual affair, meaning they're having a physical relationship with another person.
Right. This may not include the guy that is having an emotional affair. And we're going to get into the 3. That's why we want to get into the 3 types, because I think it's really important to break it down, because this affair over here may not be repairable like this affair over here. So we're going to talk about that. So what are the 3 types of infidelity as we see it?
Well, there's emotional, and any woman who's gone through that knows exactly what that is, where he's got some connection that's this sort of relationship that he has with another woman that you're not included in. And it's not a work relationship where you're just working together. It's where you spend a lot of time on the phone. You may go to lunch together, or hide out somewhere and talk, complain about various things together, all that kind of stuff. And the next one is physical. And by physical, we're separating that from sexual, because some people don't actually have sex. They do kissing, they do fondling, and that kind of thing. A meeting in secret is also kind of a physical thing. And then the last one is sexual, which includes sex, sexting, which unfortunately is something we have to put up with, and pornography. People don't always realize that that's a sexual type of cheating. And pornography absolutely destroys relationships. And I've seen it all my whole life with Bob's practice.
What's interesting about these three categories is that some people don't consider one or the other to be cheating. Some women consider all three of those to be equally horrible. And then some women think that, well, the emotional one isn't that bad. And some people think it's devastating. So what do you think about that from a woman's perspective?
Well, one of the problems is that the emotional one generally leads to the physical one. So, and so if your husband is involved in it, it's very dangerous. You can feel it, and you're kind of a mode of trying to stop it. You feel like your relationship isn't safe. And that's why we include that in forms of infidelity. If you don't feel solid about your relationship, threatened by somebody else.
It sounds like the bottom line is all three of them violate trust.
Absolutely. And trust is part of the foundation of a good marriage, of any marriage to last at all, even if it's a mediocre marriage. Trust has to be there.
How do you know if it's repairable or not?
There's some specifics that go into your relationship that may not go into everyone else's. Some of it is if your own tolerance for being able to get over it. I've known women who their husbands have had one affair and they feel bad, but the wife just simply can't get past it. She can't forgive it. She can't get past it. And so it ends. Other women can not so much overlook it, but forgive that kind of thing and have a good relationship after that. It depends partly on the woman and partly on the man. Can she rebuild trust? If you can build it, you can repair it. But if you can't, then even over time, it'll deteriorate.
I also think that when a man has been caught, it's a little different than a man that has confessed and has shown remorse and has taken the healthy steps to fix it. Those to me are so different versus the guy that, ooh, you got me. I don't know. Like, and to me,
how about you caught me and first he denies it and then he's faced with such overwhelming evidence that it's your fault. And then he finally has to say, well, let's fix it. That's completely different than if he says, I have something. I know a man once that told me that he cheated on his wife and he felt so bad. It's 25 years ago and it still bugs me. He said he took her and put her on his lap and told her how he cheated on her and he felt really bad. And she just cried and cried. And they're still married, but I remember feeling like, how would I feel if I was her? And I'm glad that he did that he confessed and tried to move on and tried to repair it. And I don't know anything about their personal relationship, but they're still married. So I assume the trust was built back. But it's hard and it's painful.
I've heard you say this so many times to so many women that have come to us and talked to us about this issue. Do you still love him? That's one of the things you always say. Do you still love him? Do you still want to be married to him? Those are really important because some of the women that come to us about infidelity are kind of at their last straw. And they're like, I'm done, but I don't know what to do. What should I do? And they kind of want permission to get divorced.
Well, it's complicated because when there's children, it always makes women more vulnerable because you're protective of your young ones. And so you think, and then money, can I do it on my own? So women, partly because of our natures and partly because of the circumstances we find ourselves in with children and so forth, we want to protect them. And we're willing to stay longer than we might if it was just us and him.
But I do think this goes back to the love part. Do you still love him? Do you still want to work on this? And do you still have something left that you think something's there? And I know that's so vague and it's going to be different for so many people, but I hear you say that a lot. And I think it's a very simple thing, but it really does register with a lot of the ladies that we talk to. And most of them say, of course I love him. I'm madly in love with him. I don't want to lose him. Most of them say that, which is interesting because the infidelity doesn't change those things for them. But then you have to determine whether or not, like we were reading those statistics earlier, the chances of him doing it again, you have so many factors that you have to weigh here. And was he caught? Did he confess? Those are all really important.
Well, the other thing is we teach women to ask themselves, did I contribute, not responsible, because he's responsible. Did I contribute to this by the way I treated him, where he felt like he had no one to go to, that he wasn't accepted, he wasn't admired, and then he meets somebody, let's say from work, who loves listening to him and admires him, and he kind of falls for it. So do we play a part? And if we do, then we can do something about that.
I recently had a woman come to me about, she suspected that he was cheating on her. It ends up that he wasn't. And I think that's an important point for the ladies too that are watching this. Like, make sure that he really, really did do it if you can, because sometimes we suspect and then it's not, and then we end up offending them and hurting them. But this lady came to me and suspected that he was, and we talked through some things. And one of the things that I found interesting was that she said, well, we haven't been intimate in months. And she didn't think that was a big deal. And I thought, well, not that gives you permission to go out there and do whatever you want. The guy has to have some responsibility. I just think when you say contributing, what are you doing to contribute? That's not going to help your marriage.
I'll tell you, it's actually shocked me how many now, because of social media, the internet and everything, how many women, basically good women, actually have the attitude in their 20s. I've been there, did that. I don't want to do the bedroom stuff anymore. And when you marry a man, we've talked about this before, you take him off the market if he's a good man. And it's not right to take him off the market and then mistreat him. It makes it high risk for him. So if you contribute to it, then you can definitely do something about it. It's not right to do that. Now, he still shouldn't do it, but it puts him in a terribly vulnerable position.
Right. And again, it gives no man an excuse to go out and do that. But we're talking to the ladies. And if the ladies out there are looking for advice for this subject, maybe you have some trust issues. Maybe there's been some things in the past that have happened. This is where we want to talk about fascinating womanhood and how valuable it is. So what kind of tips do you have for the ladies that want to study fascinating womanhood, and why is it valuable for this subject?
Well, I can't tell you how many, because I have the benefit of remembering from the time I was really a child and seeing these letters. In those days, my mother got letters, hard letters. There was no internet. All these success stories of women, sometimes they were shocking, like where I remember this one woman was in the hospital with some kind of health problem, and the woman her husband was having an affair with came in the hospital and told her about their affair. I mean, and she was heartbroken, but she practiced. She loved her husband, and she realized some of her own mistakes that contributed to it, and she practiced these principles. And within really just a few weeks, he dumped this woman. He came back to his wife, and they repaired their relationship. Now, she had the ability to forgive that, and that's a credit to her.
Well, she studied Fascinating Womanhood, right?
She studied it and practiced it. But when she wrote this success story, she took part of the responsibility for what her husband did. Not all of it, but she took her share because she treated him really bad. So it can happen, but if he is a serial cheater, it's not great.
I think the serial cheater and the addiction part of this subject it's like a separate wing of it. I think the majority of what's happening out there are not probably those things. That's probably a little bit of a smaller chunk. And this video is more for that. But yeah, the serial cheating, I've heard you guys say this so many times, the chances of that being repaired.
Well, the reason isn't because of the amount of times, it's the attitude of the person doing it. And the kind of people who do that serial cheating and lie and are deceptive and all these things, that their attitude doesn't tend to change. Now, it's possible, but it's up to them. And those kind of people don't tend to change their ways. They tend to justify. And that's why, not the numbers. The numbers aren't magic. It's the attitude. The principles of Fascinating Womanhood, number one, understanding men. Femininity is really important too, but number one, understanding men. Recognizing if you suspect that there's that sort of trouble, you maybe your relationship is leading to it. Maybe he's flirting or you're seeing him drift. Practicing the principles, understanding him. Is he getting his emotional needs met by you? Are you sympathetic? I got a letter from a woman who said that she realized her husband just left her and moved away. And she said she started looking at our YouTube videos and reading our blogs and stuff. And she said she realized she made so many mistakes for years and years.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean he should do it. You know, she told him about exactly what she apologized for, what she had done or not done. And she was very specific. And she also said she didn't blame him for what he was doing. And
I think that in a nutshell, what you're trying to say is some women don't really realize that they are becoming this kind of negative, not so loving wife. And it happens over time. With some people, it's really slow. And before you know it, you find yourself in this really sad relationship where you don't have any romance left. You don't have any love left. And that's what we're talking about when we say, what did you contribute to this? It doesn't mean it's all your fault. It doesn't mean, it gives him permission.
No, but
do what he wants.
If you essentially push somebody away for years, you shut the door, emotional door in their face for so many years, something's going to die. And,
right.
And it often does. But what you can do about it is you can change yourself. And that's the really exciting thing about Fascinating Womanhood. You can work on you, and she can be specific about what she loves about him, what she admires about him. It doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to come back, but it's going to help her no matter what. Maybe let's say she's done 35 years of this. It may be too late, but maybe not, because I've seen it. I've seen it both ways where he really does want it to work, but he just doesn't have anything left. So understanding men, the principles of that, and then femininity and learning what you can do, the power of being feminine. Women just don't understand how powerful it is. It's so powerful. Working on your character and forgiveness, just all the things that we teach women about understanding men and ourselves. Understanding men, it's like a big magnet. It draws men to you. It would draw anyone to you. Not romantically, but people are drawn to people who accept them as they are. This isn't just a principle in romantic relationships. This is a principle of life. It works with your friends, your coworkers, everyone. You accept people and you don't try to change them. People are drawn to people that they can feel comfortable around.
There's so many pieces to this. And I think, that's why we always say, we have so many people message us and we say, have you read our book yet? Because
I know
you have to study it. And it just so often that everybody wants that quick fix. What's the answer? And the answer is that you do need to put in this study and you do need to put in this work. So I'm attaching those links for the books down below, the workbook and books.
The good news is you don't have to be perfect at it. You'd be surprised how many times men respond to just, like the women have said, I feel really bad that I've done this, this, and this. Within a short space of time, like a week or so, he's starting to kind of want to sleep in the same bed again, even if there isn't any physical stuff going on, wanting to hug her.
So many success stories. And I mean, we have mounds of success stories, and I can attach some of them if that would help, but we also save them on our Instagram stories, some of them. We can't put them all in there, but you can definitely check those out. But we also have stories where it doesn't work and it's not repairable. And I think it's important to say that there are those guys out there that, like you mentioned earlier, that are serial cheaters and it won't work. And I think we sometimes get this reputation that we forgive everyone and the woman is the doormat. And that's not what infidelity, this subject, is about. It's about so much studying and calculating, and I really, it makes me sad to hear people say that we support that, because we just don't. And I've known so many women that have been divorced because of infidelity.
I
And
mean, to
I
think
think
that,
it's a positive thing for them in some cases.
well, to think that we could actually have a romantic marriage where your spouse doesn't even respect you. Your husband isn't going to respect you if you're a doormat. That's kind of basic foundational stuff. You can't be somebody that just says, oh, okay, just, and you're just sweet, and then he changes.
Right. That's not,
you've got
that's not what we're about.
We never were. We never were.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we talked about that and touched on that, because it's really hard for me to see comments that associate us with supporting men that are abusive or serial cheaters or just plain awful.
Well, the other thing is, some people think that pornography is a gray area. I don't consider it a gray area at all. It's visual.
Again, it goes back to trust.
Pornography devastates marriages.
So what about the phrase forgive and forget? What do you think about that? Do you just forgive him and forget it? I hear that
all the time. And people point back to religion. And I'm a religious person. There is nowhere in the Bible I've ever read forget. That's a man-made thing, forgive and forget. If somebody has murdered your child, you're not supposed to forget that happened. It's not even healthy to forget about it. Forgiveness is a totally different thing than forget. Sometimes forgetting makes us more vulnerable. The things you can forgive and forget are small things, little things, but it's not even possible to forget major things. And I think it's partly because it helps you to not have that repeated if you remember.
Well, if it's the case where it's something that is repairable, as we mentioned earlier, forgiveness and moving forward, to me, sounds a little bit more what we're talking about versus, oh, I'm just going to bury that like it never happened.
Well, here's the thing. And sometimes I've noticed people talk about forgiving, but they don't ever define it. They just say forgiving, assume you know what it means. Forgiveness to me means that you no longer seek hold any kind of anger or seek for some kind of revenge against that person.
Right.
You can let it go. And if it's something that is something horrible, like someone has murdered a loved one, you have to turn it over to God or some higher power and stop wishing you could kill them or do something to them. Forgiveness is letting go of the anger and the wanting revenge. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you don't still have feelings about pain and things like that. It's forgiveness is that you stop wishing that harm would come to that person.
I remember you telling me that when I was really young, and I've never forgotten it. And I completely agree with you. I think that's a really great definition.
Because people often say, well, you got to forgive. And I think, why don't they tell them what that means? Because this forgive and forget isn't even possible if you've been cheated on. I don't think it's possible to forget it. But you put it in a different category. You put it in a different perspective. And you no longer hold that against them.
In our last video that we did, we actually had Dad in it. And he spoke a little bit about, I think he was trying to talk to the men in the audience. Not that we have as very many men that watch our channel, but I think he was kind of trying to explain too to the women about men and how important it is that you understand about men that they can slip downstairs when it comes to pleasure really quickly. I can play that clip if you want me to, because
that would be good.
Yeah, I guess what I see is people, there's different ways to live, and one is to be willing to enter into a relationship with somebody and over time build something together that's meaningful. What I see sometimes is, unfortunately, especially men that are more interested in pleasure than responsibility, and they're willing to take momentary pleasure and, in a sense, forget the responsibility part, which really is the important part, because together, I think pleasure and responsibility together are wonderful. But when you try to separate the two and you're just going for the pleasure, life ends up being pretty empty, because you can't quite always get enough pleasure, or you're constantly chasing more and more and more. and you're left with an empty feeling.
I think the point in bringing this up, what I found very compelling about it is that men the visual and intimate pleasures are a little tougher for them to battle than for women. And not all women and men are the same, but I think we have different temptations than they might have. And it's harder for them at times. I think it was just really compelling what Dad had said.
Men have a lot more testosterone than women do. We need that. We need that in them, but it also requires, it's a very powerful thing. And it also requires strength management on their part. And when you understand, as part of understanding men, when just because a man has it does not, like we said before, excuse him from living in his basement all the time and just seeking pleasure through sex, drugs, pornography, any of that stuff. All of us have a responsibility to be mature. No one can do that for us. We have to do it for ourselves. But what we can do for our men through our example partly is to kind of assume and expect that they will manage that. Because it's not okay for them to just live in the basement. Kind of like women sometimes do, just eat pizza all the time and just pizza. I should just throw caution to the wind.
Women can live downstairs too.
The exciting thing about what we're saying here is that the power that women have through these Fascinating Womanhood principles can do almost like magic in your relationship. If we could only convey to all women the power, the latent power that we have within us, that we can do without trying to get them to do something, that we can do on our own, and how really simple a lot of it is, with understanding him, admiring him, being specific, treasure hunting, looking for the good in him, and remembering why we married him in the first place, working on ourselves, making sure that because men are visual hunters, making sure that we look decent.
Let ourselves go.
Totally let ourselves go and take for granted, I already got me a husband, kind of an attitude. And the power that we can have to actually, everybody who gets married wants their marriage to last. They wouldn't do it. It's too hard. It's too much of a commitment. It's too expensive to do it if you didn't want it to last. And it doesn't, and it can last, and it can be romantic your whole life. And that's the message we're trying to give everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been a really, really great discussion. And I hope you all will comment down below this video and let us know your questions, your comments. We really want to hear from you. I'm attaching all of the links to find us on social media, as well as the links to purchase Dixie's books and workbooks. Definitely have to study all of these principles to fully grasp all the things we're talking about today. And don't forget to hit like on our video, subscribe to our channel so that you know when we have new videos coming out every week. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.